You're a U-boat commander, fresh out of training school. 2 years of rigorous preparation. You know every procedure, every tactic, every emergency drill. You're confident. Your crew is confident. You were trained by the best, by veterans, by survivors. Then you're on your first patrol. Depth charges exploding around you. You follow your training exactly. Do everything right. Everything by the book. And your submarine sinks anyway. Everyone dies. Because your training was teaching you to fight the last war. Not this one. Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story shows how the best training in the world became a death sentence. Let's go back to 1935. Germany is rebuilding its navy. The Treaty of Versailles banned submarines. But Hitler doesn't care about treaties. U-boat construction starts. And with it, U-boat training. Comprehensive, intensive, world-class. The training program was run by Karl Dönitz. He'd been a U-boat commander in World War I. Survived. Knew the game intimately. Dönitz designed a training system that was legendary. Brutal but effective. Months of classroom instruction. Months of practical training. Simulated patrols. Emergency drills. Everything. Prospective U-boat crew members went through multiple schools. Basic seamanship. Specialized technical training. Submarine school. Advanced tactical training. For officers, it was even longer. 2 years minimum. Sometimes 3. You learned navigation, tactics, torpedo calculations, leadership, engineering, everything. And it wasn't just theory, practical exercises constantly. You'd practice diving, surfacing, silent running, depth charge evasion, torpedo attacks, over and over until it was instinct. The washout rate was high. Maybe 40% didn't make it through training. Too hard, too demanding, too dangerous even in practice. But those who graduated were excellent, truly excellent. The best trained submarine crews in the world. Early war, this showed. U-boats dominated, sank hundreds of Allied ships. The happy time, they called it. 1940-1941. U-boats were unstoppable, and the training was a big reason why. Crews knew their boats intimately, could operate in darkness, could handle emergencies, could execute complex attacks flawlessly. The training worked, really worked. U-boat aces were being created. Kretschmer, Prien, Schepke, commanders with dozens of kills, living legends, and the training taught their tactics, their methods, their successes. New crews learned from the best. But here's the problem. The war was changing rapidly, and the training wasn't keeping up. 1941. The Allies are adapting. New technology, new tactics, new weapons, radar, ASDIC sonar, depth charges, hedgehog mortars, escort carriers, hunter-killer groups, code breaking. The game is changing, fast. Every month brings new Allied advantages. But U-boat training, still teaching 1940 tactics, still teaching how veterans succeeded in the happy time. Why? Because those veterans were still alive, still successful, still the model. The training doctrine said, surface at night to attack, dive during day, avoid aircraft, use wolfpack tactics, standard procedures. This worked in 1940. By 1942, it was getting dangerous. By 1943, it was suicide. But the training schools didn't change fast enough. Couldn't change fast enough. Here's why. The training pipeline was long. 2 years to train a crew. What you teach today doesn't reach the front lines for 2 years. So new crews, arriving in 1943, were trained on 1941 tactics. Tactics that worked 3 years ago. Against technology that didn't exist 3 years ago. It's like training someone to fight with swords and then sending them against machine guns. And there's another problem. The successful veterans, the ones teaching tactics, were dying, being killed. The aces, the experienced commanders, Prien, Dead March 1941. Szepka. Dead March 1941. Kretschmer. Captured March 1941. The best teachers were gone, replaced by less experienced instructors, teaching what used to work, not what works now. New crews would arrive at operational units, full of confidence, ready to apply their training, and veterans would look at them with pity. Forget what they taught you. That'll get you killed. Here's what actually works now. But ingrained training is hard to override. Muscle memory, doctrine, procedures. You default to training under stress, and in combat, you're always under stress. Let me break down specific training doctrines that became death sentences. Doctrine 1. Surface running at night is safe. This was true in 1940. Aircraft couldn't find you in darkness. Destroyers couldn't see you. Surface. Run fast on diesels. Attack convoys. By 1943, totally wrong. Radar-equipped aircraft everywhere. They could see you in pitch darkness. From miles away. You surface, you get bombed within minutes. But training still taught surface running, still taught night attacks on the surface. Crews followed this training, died. Doctrine 2. Dive deep to evade depth charges. Standard procedure. Hear destroyers coming. Dive deep. 150 meters, 200 meters. Below where depth charges are usually set. Made sense in 1940. Most depth charges were set for 50-100 meters. Go deeper, you're safe. By 1943, depth charges had variable settings. Could explode at 200 meters, 300 meters. Going deep didn't help. Sometimes made it worse because you were trapped. But training emphasized deep diving. Crews did it instinctively. Sometimes walked right into deeper set charges. Doctrine 3. Silent running lets you hide. Go completely quiet. Shut down all machinery. No noise. Destroyers can't find you with sonar. True against early ASDIC. Maybe. By 1943, improved sonar could detect even silent submarines. And going silent meant you couldn't maneuver, couldn't evade, just sat there waiting. But training drilled silent running constantly. Crews trusted it. Went silent. Got killed anyway. Doctrine 4. Convoy attacks should be aggressive. Close approach. Multiple torpedoes. Press the attack home. Don't break off early. Worked when convoys were lightly escorted. By 1943, convoys had dozens of escorts. Aggressive attacks meant getting immediately counterattacked by overwhelming force. But training taught aggression. Boldness. Pressing attacks. Crews did this. Got swarmed by escorts. Died. These doctrines were all valid once. All taught for good reasons. All based on real success. But they became obsolete. Deadly. And crews trusted them because that's what training does. Makes you trust the procedures. Numbers tell the story clearly. Watch the survival rates change. 1940, 1941. U-boat crews had about 60% chance of surviving a patrol, maybe higher. Most boats came back. Losses were manageable. Training graduates from this period did well. Applied their training. It worked. They survived. Got promoted. Became instructors. 1942. Survival rate starts dropping. Maybe 50% per patrol. Still decent but declining. Some new tactics work. Some don't. Training still based on 1940 successes. Minor updates, but nothing fundamental. Crews still confident. 1943. Black May. 43 U-boats sunk in 1 month. Survival rates collapse. Maybe 30% chance of completing a patrol safely. Training completely obsolete now. But the pipeline is full. Crews trained in 1941-1942 tactics arriving constantly. Being slaughtered. 1944-1945. 70% casualty rate overall. 7 out of 10 U-boat crew members die. Most on their first or second patrol. New crews arrive. fresh from training, confident, apply their training, dead within weeks. The experienced crews, the survivors, they knew better. They'd adapted, learned new tactics, ignored training, improvised. But new crews, they trusted training, had no combat experience to tell them otherwise, did what they were taught, died doing it. One veteran commander, Peter Kramer, described it. The new crews were brave, well-trained technically, but they fought like it was 1940. The enemy knew all our old tricks. The new crews didn't know any new tricks. They were lambs to slaughter. Another veteran, Herbert Werner. I watched new boats arrive. Green crews. Confident. I knew most wouldn't return. They trusted their training too much. Didn't adapt fast enough. Dead before they learned. The training had become a liability. A curse. Better to have untrained crews who adapted quickly than perfectly trained crews following obsolete doctrine. Let me give you specific cases. Real submarines, real crews, killed by their training. U-954, February 1943, Commander Rudolf Löwing. Recent graduate of advanced training, excellent marks, top of his class, operating south of Iceland, detects a convoy, follows training perfectly, surfaces at night, approaches on diesels, fast attack. But there's an escort carrier with the convoy, radar-equipped aircraft. They detect U-954 on the surface, attack immediately. Löwing follows evasion training, crash dive, go deep, silent running, everything by the book. Doesn't matter. Aircraft dropped acoustic torpedoes, homed in on propeller noise. Direct hit. U-954 sank. All hands lost. Training killed them. Surfacing at night. Approaching aggressively. Deep diving. All correct procedures from training. All fatal in 1943. U-359, July 1943. Commander Heinz Forster, experienced officer. Multiple patrols, but trained in 1940 to 41 era. Caught by destroyers. Follows doctrine. Deep dive. 200 meters. Maximum depth for Type 7th. Silent running. The destroyers have variable depth charges. Set for 200 meters. Pattern drops. 3 charges explode directly around U-359. Catastrophic damage. Hull ruptures. Flooding. The submarine sinks deeper. Implodes at 280 meters. Entire crew killed instantly. Training doctrine killed them. Go deep was correct in 1940. Fatal in 1943. U-731. May 1944. Commander Werner, Teschand. Fresh from training command. He'd been an instructor. Knew the training intimately. Taught it himself. First operational patrol. Detected by hunter-killer group. Aircraft force him to submerge. Destroyers converge. Teschand follows training perfectly. Evasive maneuvers. Pattern from the manual. Exactly as taught. Predictable. The Allies knew these patterns. They'd captured training manuals from U-505. They knew standard evasion tactics. The destroyers predicted Teschand's movements. Pre-positioned. When he zigged where training said to zig, depth charges were already there. U-731 was destroyed. Teschand died following his own training. The training he'd taught others. Ironic. Tragic. Preventable if training had adapted. If you're still watching and realizing how insane this is, subscribe right now, because it gets even worse. The German Navy knew training was obsolete. By 1943, they knew. Reports from survivors, analysis of losses. It was obvious, but they couldn't fix it fast enough. The bureaucracy, the pipeline, the infrastructure. To update training, you need updated doctrine, updated manuals, updated procedures. Who writes these? Experienced combat veterans. But most experienced veterans were dead, or still at sea, or too valuable to pull off operations. The ones who were pulled back to update training often weren't the best qualified. They were the ones who'd gotten lucky. not necessarily the ones who'd adapted best, and updating training meant admitting the old training was wrong, politically difficult. Donitz had designed the original program. Admitting it was obsolete meant admitting mistakes, pride, institutional inertia, politics, all delayed updates. When updates did happen, they took months to implement. Rewrite manuals, retrain instructors, update simulators, roll out to all training centers. By the time an update reached new crews, the war had changed again. The update was already outdated. There was also a resource problem. Training took time. 2 years for a crew. Germany was losing U-boats faster than that. Pressure to shorten training, rush crews through, get them operational faster, fill the losses, but shortened training meant even worse preparation. Crews with less knowledge, less practice, more likely to rely on basic doctrine, which was obsolete. Catch-22. Take time to train properly with obsolete doctrine, or rush training with inadequate preparation. Either way, crews died. By 1944, some U-boats were going operational with crews that had 6 months training. 6 months. Compared to 2 years earlier in the war, these crews had no chance. Technically incompetent and tactically obsolete. Dead within weeks. Meanwhile, surviving veterans were adapting on their own, ignoring training, creating new tactics. They'd learned the hard way. Trial and error, friends dying, close calls. What works now versus what training said. New survival tactics emerged. Unofficial, spread word of mouth. Never made it into training manuals. Tactic 1. Never surface at night anymore. Period. Too dangerous. Stay submerged. Use schnorchel if you have one. Surface only in absolute emergency. Training said surface at night. Veterans said no. Crews who listened to training died. Crews who listened to veterans sometimes survived. Tactic 2. Shallow is safer than deep. Counterintuitive. Training said go deep, but veterans learned. Depth charges set deep are rare. Most escorts still used shallow settings. Plus, shallow meant you could emergency surface faster if needed. Some veterans would dive to only 50 meters during attacks, right under the destroyer, too close for depth charges. Risky, but it worked. Tactic 3. Run toward the attack. Training said evade away, run from danger. Veterans learned. Destroyers predict your evasion. They know the training. If you do the unexpected, toward the threat, you might slip through the pattern. Insane. Counterintuitive. But it saved some boats. Tactic 4. Trust nothing. Every situation is unique. No standard procedures. Adapt constantly. Training taught procedures. Veterans learned procedures get you killed. Think. Adapt. Improvise. But here's the tragedy. This knowledge wasn't being captured, wasn't being taught. Veterans who survived often didn't make it back to teaching, stayed operational, eventually got killed anyway. Their hard-won knowledge died with them. Each new crew had to relearn everything, starting from obsolete training. Most didn't survive the learning curve. This wasn't just a tactical failure. It was institutional, systematic, organizational. The German Navy failed to create feedback loops, failed to capture lessons learned, failed to update doctrine in real time. Compare this to the Allies. British and American navies had rapid adaptation systems. Combat reports were analyzed constantly. New tactics were identified. Best practices were documented. Training was updated within weeks. Allied escort crews in 1944 were being trained on tactics developed in 1943. Maybe 6-month lag. Manageable. German U-boat crews in 1944 were being trained on tactics from 1940 to 41. 3 to 4 year lag. Fatal. Why the difference? Culture, structure, communication. Allied navies encouraged innovation, welcomed new ideas, rewarded adaptation. Junior officers could propose new tactics. They'd be tested. If they worked, they'd be adopted quickly. German Navy was more rigid, hierarchical, top-down. Doctrine came from above. Junior officers didn't question it, didn't propose alternatives. Or if they did, they were ignored. Dönitz was brilliant in many ways, strategic vision, leadership, but he was also stubborn, believed in his systems, resistant to fundamental changes. When evidence showed training was obsolete, he made minor adjustments, not systemic overhaul, not complete rethinking. Too little, too late. Thousands of crew members paid with their lives. There's also the propaganda problem. Germany couldn't admit U-boats were losing. Public morale, political pressure. So, official reports downplayed losses, emphasized successes. This created false feedback. Training appeared to work because failures were minimized in reports. Instructors thought their training was still valid. Kept teaching the same way. Kept graduating crews to die. Imagine being a U-boat crew member. You've trained for 2 years. You trust your training. You're confident. First patrol. Within days, you realize nothing works like training said. Surface at night. Planes attack immediately. Radar sees you. You didn't know about radar this good. Training mentioned radar, but downplayed it. Silent running. Doesn't hide you. Sonar finds you anyway. Training said this would work. It doesn't. Evasion patterns. Escorts predict them. They know your moves. You're following training. They're following your training manual. They know where you'll be. This psychological shock was devastating. Your training, your confidence, your preparation, all useless. What do you trust now? Some crews adapted, learned fast, throughout training, improvised, survived longer. Others clung to training. It was all they knew, all they had. Following procedures gave comfort, structure, even if procedures didn't work. At least we followed doctrine, at least we did it right. Right according to obsolete standards, dead either way. Survivors described this psychological whiplash. Werner's memoir talks about it extensively. The moment you realize your training is worthless, the fear, the disorientation. Some men broke, combat fatigue, psychological breakdown, refused to follow training but didn't know what else to do, paralyzed by uncertainty. Others became reckless. Training is useless, nothing matters. Might as well attack aggressively, die fighting. Few found the balance. Selective use of training, technical skills still valid, operating the boat, torpedo calculations. But tactical doctrine ignored, adapted to reality. Those were the survivors, but they were rare. By 1944, the situation was desperate. U-boat losses were catastrophic. New crews were dying on first patrols. Something had to change. The Navy tried crash programs, condensed training, focus on essentials. Get crews operational in months instead of years. This made things worse. Crews now had inadequate technical skills and obsolete tactical training. Double failure. They tried veteran mentorship programs. Pair new boats with experienced commanders for first patrols. Learn on the job. Except most experienced commanders were dead. The few remaining were exhausted, traumatized. Not great teachers. They tried new technology. Type 51 submarines. Revolutionary design. Fast underwater. Quiet. Supposedly didn't need old tactics, but crews were trained on Type 7 boats. Different systems, different handling. First Type 21 patrols had crews fumbling with unfamiliar equipment. Training for Type 21 was, or rushed, incomplete. Crews barely understood the new boats. Technical failures were common, not from Allied action, from operator error. They tried propaganda, told crews they were elite, the best. Germany soared, morale boosting. But morale can't stop depth charges, can't make obsolete tactics work. Crews knew the truth. 70% casualties. They did the math. Some simply deserted, refused to sail. Court-martial was better than certain death. In late war, desertion rates from U-boat service increased dramatically. Others went through the motions, sailed on patrol, avoided combat when possible, returned claiming they found no targets. Survival over mission. Can you blame them? Following training meant death. Following orders meant death. At least avoiding combat gave you a chance. May 1945. Germany is collapsing. The war is clearly lost. But U-boats are still sailing, still following training, still dying. U-320. April 1945. Type 7C. Crew, trained in late 1944. 6 months training, bare minimum. First patrol, operating off Scotland, detected by escorts. Follows evasion doctrine, exactly as trained, destroyed by depth charges. Entire crew lost 1 month before German surrender. They died following their training that was obsolete, training that got thousands killed, but it was all they knew. U-2336. May 1945. Type rewritten, new submarine type, small coastal boat, different tactics required. Crew trained on Type 7 doctrine. Wrong type, wrong tactics. But that's what training covered. Operating off Britain. Last days of war. Surrendered when Germany capitulated. Lucky. Survived because they didn't have time to follow training into disaster. U-2511. Type the E1. The advanced submarine. One of the few operational. Commander Adalbert Schnee. Actually encountered a British cruiser on patrol. Perfect attack position. Could have fired. Could have proven Type V1 capabilities. Schnee didn't fire. War was ending, no point. Surfaced. Surrendered. Smart decision. Survived. If he'd followed training, followed doctrine, attacked, he'd likely have been hunted and killed. Days before peace. Training said attack. Reality said survive. He chose reality. After the war, analysis began. Why did U-boats lose? Technology, numbers, code breaking, resources, but also training, obsolete doctrine, institutional failure to adapt. Post-war interviews with survivors confirmed this. Almost all mentioned training problems, tactics that didn't work, procedures that got crews killed. Allied interrogators were sometimes surprised. German technical training was excellent. Operating the submarines, maintenance, engineering, top-notch. But tactical training was terrible, dangerously outdated, actively harmful. The Allies had captured training manuals from U-505, analysed them, found they were still teaching 1940-41 tactics in 1944. No wonder we're winning, one analyst wrote. They're training their crews to die. The German Navy eventually acknowledged this. Post-war analysis admitted training failures, institutional rigidity, failure to adapt, but 28,000 dead submariners couldn't be brought back. 70% casualty rate, much of it preventable with better training adaptation. Modern military doctrine learned from this. Rapid adaptation is critical. Training must update constantly. Feedback loops must be fast. Institutional flexibility matters. The US Navy specifically studied German U-boat training failures, created systems to avoid the same trap. Continuous doctrine updates. Combat reports analyzed immediately. Training adjusted in real time. This became standard. Modern military training adapts constantly. What works today might not work tomorrow. Stay flexible, stay current, or die. The U-boat crews learned this lesson the hard way, trusted their training, died for that trust. For years, German U-boat training was the best in the world. Comprehensive, rigorous, effective. Crews trusted it completely. Why wouldn't they? It had created aces, sunk hundreds of ships, dominated the Atlantic. Then the war changed, technology advanced, tactics evolved, the Allies adapted, but the training didn't. stayed stuck in 1940, teaching obsolete doctrine, creating confident crews with worthless tactics. Those crews followed their training, did everything right, everything they were taught, and died by the thousands, because right according to training was wrong according to reality. 28,000 German submariners, 70% casualties, many killed not by Allied superiority alone, but by their own obsolete training. They trusted their training until it started getting them killed. And by the time they realized the truth, it was too late. The lesson is universal. Training is only as good as its currency. Adapt or die. Update or perish. Stay flexible or become obsolete. German U-boat crews learned this. Learned it in the depths. Learned it in the darkness. Learned it while sinking. They trusted their training. Their training failed them. And the ocean floor is filled with submarines crewed by men who did everything right according to training. And died anyway. If you made it all the way through this, you need to subscribe right now. Click that button, turn on notifications, because next week's video is going to blow your mind even more. And there's another insane video on screen right now. Click it, watch it. You won't regret it. This is history that matters, lessons written in blood, stories that need to be told. See you next time.